She owes us $50,000, my father declared to the courtroom, his voice carrying the righteous indignation of a man convinced of his moral superiority. We invested in her business 5 years ago, and now she refuses to pay us back. Our own daughter, treating us like strangers, like creditors she can ignore. My mother sobbed theatrically beside him, calling me an ungrateful thief who had abandoned the family that sacrificed everything to help her succeed. But why did I stand silently through their accusations without offering a single word of defense? And why did Judge Patricia Morrison suddenly stop reviewing the filing documents with an expression of dawning recognition? Wait. Meridian Tech Solutions. The judge looked up sharply. I know this company. I just signed the regulatory approval yesterday for the state's portion of a major acquisition. She turned to me with undisguised disbelief. You're selling this company for $47 million. The deal closes next week. She glanced between my parents and me. Why is anyone claiming you owe them $50,000 when you about to receive one of the largest tech acquisition payouts in this state's history? My parents' confident expressions flickered. That's impossible, my father said. The company failed. She told us it failed years ago. The company is valued at $47 million, Mr. Whitmore. I signed the paperwork myself. Whatever your daughter told you, this business did not fail. The courtroom shifted. My parents' attorney began shuffling papers nervously. And I finally allowed myself to speak. They're right that I told them the company failed. What they're not telling you is why. My parents had always measured love in transactions. Growing up, every gift came with strings. Every opportunity came with expectations. Every moment of support was logged in an invisible ledger that would eventually come due. We paid for your dance lessons, you owe us respect. We bought you a car, you owe us obedience. We funded your college, you owe us your future. The currency of our family wasn't affection. It was debt. When I'd started Meridian Tech Solutions at 24, I'd been determined to build something entirely my own. No family money, no parental involvement, no transactions that could be leveraged against me later. But starting a tech company requires capital, and banks don't lend to 24-year-olds with nothing but ideas. My parents had offered to invest. The $50,000 had come with conditions I should have anticipated. We're partners now, my father had announced after writing the check. We expect regular updates, quarterly reports, and input on major decisions. It's an investment, Dad. Not a partnership. You'll get returns when the company becomes profitable. We're your parents. We're not some strangers you can ignore. The pattern established itself immediately. Weekly calls demanding information I couldn't share, proprietary details, client names, strategic plans. Suggestions that were actually demands. Criticism disguised as concern. You need to fire that developer, he's too expensive. You should pivot to a different market, your approach isn't working. Why aren't you profitable yet? We expected returns by now. They knew nothing about technology, nothing about building companies, nothing about the patience required to create something valuable. But they'd given me $50,000, and in their minds, that purchased unlimited authority over my decisions. The breaking point came in year 2. I'd secured a major contract, a government agency needed the security software we developed, and the deal would have transformed Meridian from struggling startup to legitimate company. It was the validation I'd been working toward. My father found out through a mutual acquaintance. I hear you landed a big government contract. Congratulations. His voice was cold. Strange that I had to hear about it from someone else. I was going to tell you. When? After the money came in? After you'd figured out how to cut us out? Nobody's cutting you out. You're investors. You'll receive returns based on company performance. We're not investors. We're your parents. We're the reason this company exists. And you're treating us like strangers you owe money to. That's literally what you are. You invested $50,000. That's a financial relationship, not a parental one. The call ended badly. Most of our calls ended badly. My parents' response to feeling excluded was to demand more access. They wanted board seats. They wanted veto power over major decisions. They wanted their names on company documents, their presence in meetings, their authority recognized by my employees and partners. We made this possible, my mother insisted. Without our money, there is no Meridian Tech Solutions. Without my work, my idea, my 18-hour days, there's no company either. The $50,000 was important, but it wasn't everything. It was enough that we deserve respect, recognition, partnership. You deserve returns on your investment. That's what we agreed to. We're your parents. We don't need agreements. We need you to remember who made your success possible. The transaction mindset applied to everything. Even their own daughter's achievements weren't really hers, they were products of parental investment, subject to parental ownership. I made a decision that would haunt me for years. I told them the company had failed. It was a lie. Meridian was actually beginning to thrive. The government contract had opened doors, revenue was growing, and investors were expressing interest. But every success increased my parents' demands, intensified their interference, strengthened their conviction that they owned me and everything I built. So I told them the company had collapsed. That the contracts fell through. That I was shutting down operations and looking for a regular job. "We want our money back," my father said immediately. "I don't have it. The company failed. Investments in failed companies don't get returned, that's why they're called investments, not loans. You owe us $50,000. I owe you nothing. You invested in a company that didn't succeed. That's the risk of investment. We're your parents. You're investors who lost money. It happens every day to investors everywhere. I'm sorry the company didn't work out, but I can't create money that doesn't exist." We stopped speaking after that. The silence suited me. Meridian Tech Solutions continued growing in secret. Without my parents' interference, I could focus entirely on building. The team expanded. The product improved. Major clients signed contracts. Revenue increased annually, then quarterly, then monthly. By year 4, we were fielding acquisition offers. I kept everything hidden. Changed my phone number. Moved apartments. Built a life entirely separate from the family that had tried to own me through financial manipulation. When Nexus Corporation offered $47 million for Meridian, I accepted. The deal would make me wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined, and completely independent of parents who had taught me that love and money were the same thing. Then they filed the lawsuit. The lawsuit claimed I had fraudulently solicited investment, misrepresented company status, and refused to honor legitimate debts. They'd found out about the acquisition somehow, perhaps public regulatory filings, perhaps mutual acquaintances who recognized the company name. They'd realized their failed investment was actually worth millions. Their demand, $50,000 plus 5 years of expected returns plus damages for fraud. Total, $2.3 million. Their claim, I had lied about the company failing, deliberately concealed its success, and stolen their rightful share of an investment they'd made in good faith. The irony was breathtaking. They accused me of exactly what they'd done to me my entire life, treating relationships as transactions, measuring connection in dollars, believing that money created ownership. The courtroom revelation changed everything. Judge Morrison had recognized Meridian from the regulatory approval she'd processed. The acquisition wasn't secret, it was a matter of public record, documented through proper legal channels. "Ms. Whitmore, did you tell your parents the company had failed?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Was that true?" "No. The company was succeeding. I lied to end their involvement in my business and my life." "Why?" I took a breath. This was the question I'd been avoiding for 5 years. Because my parents have never understood the difference between investing and owning. They gave me $50,000 and expected it to purchase authority over every decision I made. They demanded board seats, veto power, and recognition in a company they contributed nothing to beyond initial capital. When I refused, they accused me of ingratitude, disloyalty, and theft. "So you lied about the company failing?" I told them what they needed to hear to let me go. I couldn't build something valuable while fighting them at every step. The lie was wrong, I accept that, but it was the only way to escape. My father's attorney attempted to redirect. "Your Honor, regardless of Ms. Whitmore's reasons, she defrauded her own parents. She told them their investment was worthless while secretly building a $47 million company. They deserve compensation, they deserve returns on their investment, counselor. Not compensation for fraud." Judge Morrison reviewed the documents. "Was there a formal investment agreement?" My attorney produced the paperwork. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore invested $50,000 in exchange for a 3% equity stake in Meridian Tech Solutions. Standard convertible note structure. 3% of $47 million is $1.41 million. That's their return on investment. We want damages for fraud," my father started. "You want more than you're entitled to. That's been the pattern throughout this case." The judge's voice had hardened. "You invested $50,000 and you're claiming $2.3 million. That's not recovering losses, that's extortion." The evidence my attorney presented told the fuller story. Emails from my parents demanding board positions, threatening to expose my business practices if I didn't comply, insisting that their investment entitled them to operational control. Text messages calling me ungrateful, demanding weekly reports, threatening to sabotage client relationships if I didn't provide the access they demanded. Voicemails from my father screaming about disrespect, from my mother weeping about betrayal, from both of them making clear that the $50,000 was never an investment, it was a leash. Your client's behavior created the conditions for Ms. Whitmore's deception, the judge observed. They treated their daughter's company as property they owned rather than a business they de-invested in. When she resisted their control, they escalated demands and threats. We were concerned parents, my mother attempted. You were investors who confused capital with ownership. That confusion doesn't entitle you to additional compensation. The ruling came after 2 hours of testimony. The investment agreement is clear, a $50,000 investment for 3% equity. The current value of that equity is $1.41 million based on the acquisition price. That is what the plaintiffs are entitled to receive. My father stood. That's less than we claimed. You claimed $2.3 million based on fictional damages and inflated expectations. You're receiving $1.41 million based on actual investment returns. Most investors would be thrilled with a 2,700% return over 5 years. But she lied to us. She ended a relationship that had become abusive. Parents who demand operational control over their adult children's businesses, who threaten exposure and sabotage when denied, who treat every interaction as a transaction, they are not victims of fraud. They are participants in a dynamic they helped create. The judge turned to me. Ms. Whitmore, you did lie to your parents. That was wrong, regardless of your reasons. But I'm not awarding damages for that deception because the deception was a response to behavior that went far beyond normal parental concern. You paid a different price for that lie: years of estrangement, guilt, and fear of discovery. That's consequence enough. The $1.41 million was transferred within a week. My parents received almost 30 times their original investment. They should have been celebrating. They turned $50,000 into nearly $1.5 million through nothing but writing a check and waiting. Instead, they were furious. She owes us more, my father told reporters outside the courthouse. She built that company with our support, and she cut us out of our rightful share. Rightful share. As if 3% wasn't exactly what they'd agreed to. As if their $50,000 entitled them to more than the contract specified. As if being my parents meant the normal rules of investment didn't apply. The reporters asked me for comment. They invested $50,000 and received $1.41 million. That's a 2,700% return. I don't know what else they expected. They say you lied to them about the company failing. I did. I lied because they made it impossible to succeed while being honest. Every achievement was something they wanted to control. Every decision was something they wanted to override. I couldn't build a company while managing their interference. Do you regret the estrangement? I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret protecting what I built. The acquisition closed the following Tuesday. $47 million. After taxes and the payout to my parents, I retained approximately $31 million, enough to never work again if I chose, enough to fund whatever I wanted to build next, enough to be permanently free of transactional relationships. I bought a house in a city where my parents didn't know anyone. Changed my number again. Built a life that had no connection to the family that had taught me that love came with invoices. The money didn't make me happy, money never does, not really. But it made me safe. It made me independent. It made it impossible for anyone to ever claim ownership of my achievements again. My mother called once, 6 months after the ruling. I don't know how she got the number, probably hired someone to find it. Her voice was the same mixture of hurt and accusation I remembered from childhood. We gave you everything. We sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay us. You gave me $50,000 with strings attached. You received $1.41 million. That's a good deal by any measure. We're your parents. You're people who taught me that every gift is a transaction, every kindness is a debt, every relationship is a balance sheet. I learned that lesson. I'm just applying it. We loved you. You invested in me. Those aren't the same thing, Mom. I spent my whole childhood learning the difference. Can't we start over? Can't we have a relationship that isn't about money? I don't know. Can you? Because in 40 years, you've never shown me what that looks like. She cried. I waited. Eventually, she hung up. We haven't spoken since. The Meridian acquisition team asked about my plans at the closing dinner. You're 32 years old with $31 million and no obligations. What's next? Something new. Something mine. Something nobody can claim a piece of because they wrote a check once. That sounds lonely. It sounds free. There's a difference. They didn't understand. People with normal families never understand. They don't know what it's like to have every achievement questioned, every success claimed, every moment of independence treated as betrayal. I'd built something valuable despite people who wanted to own it. The $47 million was validation, but the real victory was simpler. I was finally, completely, irreversibly free. I started a foundation last year. The Whitmore Independence Fund provides grants to young entrepreneurs escaping controlling family situations, people whose relatives treat investment as ownership, support as domination, love as leverage. The applications we receive are heartbreaking and familiar. Daughters whose mothers demand board seats in exchange for startup funding. Sons whose fathers expect veto power over hiring decisions. Brilliant young people trapped between needing capital and needing freedom. We fund them. We connect them with legal resources to protect their equity. We teach them to recognize the difference between investment and ownership before it's too late. Why this cause? A journalist asked at our launch event. Because I wish someone had funded me. I wish someone had warned me. I wish I'd known that $50,000 from the wrong people costs more than $50,000 from the right ones. Do you have a message for your parents? I thought about it. About the courtroom revelation, the $1.41 million payout, the years of silence that preceded and followed. Thank you for the lesson. I built my entire life around never repeating it. They claimed I owed them $50,000. They sued their own daughter for money they'd already made 30 times over. They sat in a courtroom and called me a thief while the judge held paperwork proving their $50,000 investment was worth $1.41 million. And they were still furious. Still convinced they deserved more. Still certain that being my parents entitled them to everything I'd built. The company didn't fail, but the family did, long before I ever told that lie. I just stopped pretending otherwise. They invested $50,000 and received $1.41 million. They expected $47 million and control over their daughter's life. The difference between those expectations tells you everything about why I had to leave.